I was about 6 years old actually, and my tonsils had to be removed. And I remember it well. I remember the way the hospital looked, that hospital green everywhere. I remember the doctor and what he was wearing. And I remember the little mask going over my head and him asking me to count back from 10 to 9 to 8. I remember it well. And actually the best thing I remember is my grandmother walking into the room after it was all finished with this huge big doll and the best thing, vanilla ice cream. And she told me I could eat as much of it as I wanted. And obviously I did. I remember it well. I actually remember it like it was yesterday. There's only one problem. I still have my tonsils. This actually hit me when I was 17 years old and I was talking to my mom about it. And just in conversation, I said, you know, remember when I had my tonsils removed? And she looked at me very funny and she said, what are you on about? You still have your tonsils and you were never in the hospital. But I remember it. Actually, it's more than that. I don't just remember it, I absolutely feel like it. And I have to keep reminding myself that none of this ever happened. And it didn't just happen to my brother either, you know, that would have been an easy explanation. But as far as we can tell, it must have been one of my friends that had this happen to, and I took their story as my own. I get asked all the time why storytelling is important, and this is one of the reasons. For your body, it doesn't matter whether it was a real-life experience or a well-told story. Physically, you respond the same. Because this is how story works. It activates the imagination to trigger an experience. And a well-told story can have as much impact as a real-life experience. As 24/7 Storytelling, we help businesses, government agencies, NGOs to effectively use storytelling in their business. Anything from one-on-one to building a collective story with 500, 1,000, 1,500 people. If you want to be a professional, or more importantly, if you want to be a leader, you have to first be a great storyteller. I've only ever wanted to become one thing in my life, which is an international peace negotiator. Now this, as you can maybe imagine, made life on the playground slightly difficult for me. Children didn't really like me or understand me. Teachers didn't know what to do with me. And parents thought I was a bad influence on their children. I was called crazy on many occasions. And I won't deny it, it was rough. I was fascinated by news and politics, about who had power where in the world. And for me, the most important thing was to find out how I could get people to trust me with such a process, and how I could get people in my country as Holland or here in Ireland to care about something that was going on the other side of the world. Now looking back at it, I can tell why people thought I was slightly crazy, because perhaps these thoughts were a bit weird for a 9-year-old on the playground. But that's what I thought. And for me, this is what I got. I thought, you know, if I know what I'm talking about, I have the right information, the only thing I need to do then is convince people. I was an absolute debate rock star. I could talk people into anything, especially my brother Peter, which is why he used to get in trouble instead of me, until my parents figured out my cunning plans. I knew something about everything, and there wasn't anything I didn't know the answer to. Or at least I thought I did. To be honest with you, dealing with me was sometimes an absolute nightmare. But just in case my natural abilities weren't good enough, I went to law school. So, like many things in life, before I got better, I first got worse. Because law school taught me even more skills, and they gave me even extra credit for being the most convincing. I had my come to Jesus moment in my second year of law school. I was sitting in this beautiful church in Amsterdam with 400 of my fellow students, and I was listening to a presentation from Nan Annan. She is a United Nations lawyer and the wife of Kofi Annan. And she talked to us about access to clean water and sanitation in Africa. And I know that doesn't seem like the most sexy topic, but she had my attention, and there's something I still remember. This is what she said. You may have the right to clean water, but that doesn't get you the clean water. It isn't a law, a rule, the best information, or even the most convincing argument that inspires people to take action. It's a story. And that's the same for any type of action, whether it is personal or professional. Now, I truly believe that a story can change and solve almost every problem. And for all the other cases, it can make a situation and a problem understandable and bearable. And yes, it can solve any problem, but I've been given a very small amount of time for you tonight, so I will start with solving just a few of them. A few of them that I hope will be interesting for you personally, but also for your business. Now, let me first start with this one. The mystery behind why being right doesn't get people to do what you want them to do, even when you have the data to back it up. Because being right is the same as having the right to clean water. It doesn't get you the clean water. It doesn't get people to follow you or your ideas. Let me give you an example. In the 19th century, there were medical clinics popping up everywhere for women to deliver babies. In Vienna, there were 2 clinics. One was run by doctors, and another was run by midwives. And something interesting happened. The clinic ran by midwives had a 4% death rate, but the one that was run by the doctors actually had a death rate that was twice as high. Dr. Semmelweis, he was a young doctor at the time, he said, you know, that's quite interesting, let me see if I can find out what's going on here. So he did just that. He compared both clinics, and there was one thing that he found that was different. The doctors, they weren't just delivering babies, they were also doing autopsies. So what they would do was have their hands in dead bodies, basically, and go directly from there into delivering the babies. Semmelweis thought there must be something there, and he asked them to do one simple thing. He asked the doctors, will you please wash your hands before you deliver the babies? They did that, and the result was instant, and the death rate dropped dramatically. Dr. Semmelweis, he went out and shared his information with the medical world, but they didn't believe him, despite all the data he had. They went as far as have him committed into a mental institution where he was beaten, and ironically, he actually died of an infection 2 weeks after being put in there. The medical clinic went back to its usual practice, the death rate climbed, but no one protested. Do you have any idea how long it took before washing your hands as a surgeon became common practice in Europe? 75 years. That's how long it took. See, when you're trying to change people's behavior, there's always an old behavior that you have to get rid of first. A story that's literally in the way. And for Dr. Semmelweis' colleagues, it was very simple, but very, very powerful. He said, doctors don't make people sick. So there's something you have to understand about us people, about all of you in the room. It's this. All our decisions are subjective. And once we believe something, we believe it. And no amount of data is going to convince you otherwise. Meaning is far more important than fact. And the way you feel about facts influences those facts. If you are scared by them, you will distort the facts. And if you like the idea or you like the person, you will embrace those facts. If you want to change people's behavior, if you want to change what they are doing, there's only 2 ways of doing it. 1, you give them a new experience. Or 2, you tell them a great story. Now, there's another thing about storytelling that makes it a little bit difficult for some people to understand, especially managers. Well, a particular type of manager anyway. I've met a few of these managers and they have this type of management style. I have shared my vision, now we have a shared vision. Kind of like, I've told you what to do, now go out and do it. Or as somebody in Holland once told me, it's kind of management by foie gras, just stuffing it in like that. Your company's policies, visions, mission, strategy, you name it, it is meaningless unless there is a story attached to it. You may go out and tell me that you want me to be more creative, that you want me to change the way I work, but unless I really understand what you mean, I won't change my behavior. I work with a graphic recorder. Her name is Martine. She's from Belgium. And Naomi here will tell you exactly the same thing. If what you're doing or saying isn't creating an image in somebody's mind, you're simply not clear enough. Your company is not defined by its policies or by its rules. It is defined by its story. And if your story is compelling, if I can see it in my mind and I understand what's going on, if I can feel why it's important, you won't have to stuff it down my throat. Another problem with storytelling is that we've come to believe that there is only one story. A good one or a bad one, a positive or a negative, a true or a false one. In the beginning of this year, I was asked to go to Sudan. My parents, having raised a wannabe peace negotiator, responded rather casually. My mom said, well, that'll be a great adventure. And my dad said, well, statistically speaking, the chances of being abducted are very, very slim. My partner, however, made the mistake of Googling Sudan and freaked out. And my friends, although they're used to me traveling all over the place, said to me, Helen, is Sudan really a destination that needs to be added to the list? And I was asked time after time, is it safe to go? Truthfully, I didn't know. But I was actually more worried about another problem, and that was I didn't know how to meet and greet all these Muslim men. Because I had heard stories that not all of them liked shaking hands with women, and I'm obviously a tall, blonde woman. But I found out something very interesting. Sudan is actually very, very safe. And they explained this to me. They said, you know, we have war, but we don't have crime. So while everybody back home was very worried about my safety, I was actually incredibly safe walking down the streets of Khartoum, the capital of Sudan. More safe than I would have been if I was walking in my own city of Den Haag, and twice as safe as I would have been if I was walking in Dublin. But Sudan, unfortunately, suffers from a single story told over and over again. And there is a danger in having a single story defining something, whether it is a country, a person, or a business. The time when you could have your communications department write a corporate story and it be the story is over. Or at least I won't help you to do that. People need to be part of your story. And there's a danger in having a single story for your business. Because if people can't see themselves in the story, they won't feel they are part of your business. A single story is almost always incomplete. You need to embrace all of your story of your business, both your failures and your successes, those of your managers, your other staff, your employees, and please don't forget your clients. They have absolute great stories. Look for a balance of stories. And I promise you, you will find great stories, each one adding to the story. Yes, Sudan has many, many problems. You only need to Google it and you will see for yourself. But that's not its only story. It's also the story of Islam, who keeps fighting for women's rights. It's the story of Rami, who is a doctor, who sees his Irish wife only 3 days out of every 3 months because there are so many people that need his help. It is the story of Yasser, who is this great guy, and he grew a beard because he wanted this job so badly. He didn't want the people to ask him how old he was because he was 2 years too young. It is the story of Reem, who made me laugh every day I was in Sudan because anytime I walked in, she would always tell me the day was amazing. And it is the story of Mohammed, a wonderful, absolutely wonderful Muslim man that picked me up at the airport and gave me the biggest hug and said, "Hi, Helen, welcome to Sudan. You must be tired." When people ask me what is the best story you can tell right now, that's always the story of Sudan. It's the best thing I've ever done, and I absolutely love it. There's another thing about storytelling that I would like to talk to you about, and that is this question. Anytime I go to somebody, or we go to somebody and they hire us, or they hear about what it is that we do, the first thing they always tell us is this: I'm not a storyteller. You know, I can't tell any stories, but I'm glad you're here, but I can't actually tell any stories. But we're all constantly telling stories, one after the other. The only thing is, I've gotten tired of certain stories because I've met too many people who have to tell stories that aren't their story. I've sat into too many presentations of stories that really I wish I hadn't heard, and if I could take that time back, I would love to have the time back. But the most importantly, I've met too many people who had absolutely great things to share, but they didn't know how to get people behind their ideas. It isn't the best idea that gets implemented, it is actually the idea with the best story. Most of you have been learned, or have been taught this, that you have to keep your audience in mind when you're telling a story. We all know that, right? And they'll tell you that the audience always has one question in their mind, the what's in it for me question. But actually, your audience has another question in their mind, and a second question that is equally as important, if not more so, and comes before the what's in it for me. It's the what's in it for you question. Your audience needs to know your motive before they can trust you or your stories. You have to create a willingness to listen. They need to like you first. Then they need to trust you, and only then will they ask themselves, what's in it for me? Being a great storyteller isn't about standing in front of a group and speak in public. It is about your willingness to show up, to really tell a story, and only then will people follow you. We at 24/7 Storytelling are absolutely passionate about stories, and the reason for it is this. Please, never underestimate the power of a story, especially in business. The story is actually more powerful than the truth. If you want to tell a story, show up. Stand, tell a story, not just any story, your story. And I promise you, it will be worth it. Being a great storyteller isn't always easy. It is hard to write or build an actual good story, and it takes effort and time. And in the middle of building it, you'll have to run away. Ask me later how it was to build this story. But I can tell you one thing, it is absolutely worth it. Because if you want to change people's behavior, if you want to inspire action, if you want to find out what's really, really going on, it's worth all the effort. As 24/7 Storytelling, we believe that everything has a story and everything tells a story. You are all telling stories each day, every day. The only question I have for you is this: is it the story you want to tell?